Hi all, good morning once again. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar on robot process automation for finance leaders in higher education. I really hope all of you guys are taking the necessary precautions and staying safe. I do understand it is a difficult time at this point, and I do look forward to your participation in today's webinar. So let me quickly introduce the speakers and the panelists for the day. I am Rahul. I head the sales at KGISL for Intelligent Automation Group. The speakers for today are Murukesh from KGISL. He is actually our Intelligent Automation Group practice head. And from UiPath, we have Thomas. He's a pre-sales consultant, and he actually helps all of us in our sales pitches, in our sales meetings and discussions. Along with Thomas, we also have Haniza, who is the sales manager from UiPath. Before we get started, there is a Q&A box on your screens. Please use that and do share all of your questions. Haniza and myself will respond to you as and when required. And we'll try and take few of the questions live at the end as well. So I'll hand on to Thomas to get started with the webinar. Thomas, hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for a nice introduction, Raul. And welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us, and let's get this show on the road. So you see, we're here because we believe there are certain challenges that CFO and finance managers face on a daily basis. These challenges may be a little bit different across institutions or organizations or companies, but in general, analysts have identified a bunch of them, and most of them are related to streamlining financial and accounting operations. CFOs want to automate, want to get ready for business growth, want to be very quick and responsive to changes in the market. They want to optimize to become relevant, to remain competitive, and they want to make sure their business is more predictable in the future. Of course, CFOs and finance managers are also very much about minimizing exposure to financial risks, right? Regulations change, and these regulations often have to be implemented in your business processes literally within a number of weeks, right? Nobody wants to see errors happening in processes, and sometimes compliance process is lengthy and difficult to complete without issues. Another thing is CFOs want to actually become strategic partners with their businesses. They want to make sure that they actually deliver value. They help to change the way how people work. Instead of doing those swivel chair work, they want their employees to be empowered and do more critical thinking, do more problem solving, those activities. They want to make sure that people who work for them do not spend time clicking and typing. They actually can use their cognitive skills and experience to help with advising and consulting. So these challenges are generally something that can be addressed with automation. And automation, if we're talking about automation in a very wide concept, it's not a new topic. It's a pretty old topic, but with automation in place, CFOs can actually prepare a company to drive sustainable growth, right? We can actually deliver an automation tools that can help you prepare for the future and make it ready for your business to start growing, of course, with as little disruption in your current processes as possible. We can help with automation to minimize business risks. In place such as finance, we want to make sure compliance is met and accuracy of the deliverables is very high. And at the same time, we believe that automation can spark innovation, can change the way how people work and how they contribute to the business and to the organizations they work for. And one of the major drivers of automation nowadays is RPA. But before we go any further, I would like to quickly explain what RPA is about. So RPA, I have a definition here that I borrowed from McKinsey's webpage. It's pretty old, but it states RPA, robotic process automation, is a type of software that mimics the activity of a human being in carrying out a task within a process. So there is a very first super important takeaway from this sentence. Software that mimics the activity of a human being. So this is not a software that has a set of fixed features like, I don't know, ERP systems such as SAP or CRM systems like Microsoft, right? But instead it is a trainable digital worker that can be made to perform whatever tasks you want within a process. So that is one of the biggest and most important thing to understand about RPA. But there is a second part of this definition. So it states robots can do repetitive stuff more quickly, accurately, and tirelessly than humans, freeing them to do other tasks requiring human strength, such as emotional intelligence, reasoning, judgment, and interaction with customers. So you see, in the past, everyone was happy seeing RPA robots, copying data from one system to another system, filling in the forms, generating reports, doing reconciliation and this kind of things. But nowadays, companies who started automating long time ago, they actually want to go further. In the past, people were irreplaceable and people were super busy with all these manual processes. But nowadays, we want RPA by combination with artificial intelligence to do as much manual and repetitive work as possible and let people do parts that are really good at. So how does it work? Let me give you an example, something probably from your own backyard. Imagine we have an AP accountant. Our AP accountant is responsible for working with supplier invoices submitted by suppliers through email. Of course, we're not limited to emails, but for simplicity, I'm going to use email as an example here. So if we have this AP accountant working for us, every morning he will come to the office, he will start his computer, he will open his email client, and then he will start going through emails received overnight. He will open an email, he will take a look at attachment. If attachment is an invoice, he will save this attachment. We'll take a look at this attachment again to make sure that invoice data is correct. Then once he's sure that everything is in order with the invoice, he will open an ERP system, will type in data into this ERP system or finance systems. If everything is okay, transaction will be finalized. Now he's back to his email client. Again, opens another email, saves attachment, validates invoice data, opens ERP system or accesses the ERP system, types in the data, and bam, we have an exception. Something isn't right. Maybe prices are different in purchase order and in the invoice. Maybe delivery isn't complete yet, right? So in this particular moment, our accountant kind of wakes up a little bit and he gets a problem to solve. He needs to use his skills, he needs to use his experience, he needs to use his problem-solving skills to address this issue. The moment he's done, he can finalize this transaction, and again, he's back to his email client and going through invoice number 3, 4, 100, 200, or 500. This is what usual finance process looks like. And if you take a look at this diagram, you will see there are lots of blue boxes on my screen. And these blue boxes represent what we call a hands work. This is all the clicking. This is all the mouse movements and all the typing. This is what we refer to as low value work, because anybody, regardless of their experience or their skills, can do it. Think about it. Saving an attachment is actually an action that requires a bunch of clicks. You have to double click on the attachment, click save button, select the folder, maybe type in the name, and then click OK. This is a task performed practically with your hands only and with your brain being almost in idle state. On the other hand, if you take a look at the yellow box, you will see that we have some brains work that is important in this process, because when our employee starts solving a problem, start doing some analytics, start doing some reviews, making decision making, and on, this is where his brain is at full of its capacity, and this is where he delivers the highest value to the company. So with robots, we actually want to take all these blue boxes, we want to take them away from employee, we want the robot to do this mundane, repetitive work, and let employee, the person that we want to deliver the highest value of their work for us, handle the brains work. This is the great idea behind RPA, where robots and people work together to change the value of work that person delivers to its company. So people sometimes ask me, what can software robots do? Actually, robots can do nowadays quite a lot. They can log into any application and interact with it. So if there is a web application or desktop application, there are buttons, menus, drop-downs, input fields, all of these items, robots can interact with them the same way any other human would do. Robots are very good at moving files and folders, indexing them, organizing them. Robots can read and write data to database tables, which this is something we can't do ourselves, but robot, by having this ability, becomes really, really fast at processing large amounts of data. Robots can scrape the data from the web. Robots can connect to the system APIs, extract content from the documents, PDFs, emails, and forms, deal with emails and attachments, and finally, robots can implement practically any business rule you can imagine, make calculations, prepare reports, and output their data in whatever format you wish. So this is quite a lot of work robots can do, and with every day, robots become more and more powerful. If we're talking about use cases are literally unlimited. And when I'm saying unlimited here, this slide represents only a tiny tip of a huge iceberg. We have thousands of robots helping with HR services such as payroll, benefits administration, and even personal training. Robots are very popular in supply chain and IT services. Finance and accounting is almost endless pool of processes that can be automated very easily and with great ROI. We have robots helping with processes in purchase to pay streams, in order to cash, record to report, collections, and on and on. We'll talk about some of them today. Nowadays, robots have also become pretty good at helping with customer service, because robots can read and understand human language, human messages, execute processes behind this intent, and then respond to a person, to our customer, in a language that he will understand. So let me give you a very short idea of what robot is capable of doing. This is an example from one of the multinational companies, international companies that has a shared service center in Malaysia. And on a daily basis, they had 6 people waiting for an email with Excel attachment. This Excel attachment was a journal posting request. And this person had to open an email, actually take a look at the attachment, make sure that all the details in attachment are correct, make sure that email came from a person that is authorized to post to specific cost center or post to specific cost item. Eventually do the posting in SAP. After it's done, take a screenshot and send the response back. So at this moment, it's me doing all of this. I'm just showing you how robots look like. And the moment I press this run button, this is where robot takes over. So it's now reading emails, extracting Excel attachments in the background. Now robot is logging into SAP, typing in user credentials, triggering a transaction that's meant to be used for this posting. Now robot is copying details from Excel into respective input fields. We have a couple of accounting lines. Of course, the data can come from a PDF, from Excel, from any other system. And the moment robot is done, it records the number of transactions and sends an email back to requester. So you see, when I delivered this robot as a part of proof of concept, that was early last year, you know, I was playing a little cheeky and I told this customer that if you can bring an accountant who's the fastest of them all, and this accountant can post this journal faster than the robot, well, we're gonna give them some free robots. Those free robots never happened because robots can be really, really fast at repetitive manual tasks. So let's take a look to a bit bigger picture, because we've just spoken about the robots, but the robots are not the only way to achieve automation. You see, I came to Malaysia 13 years ago, and I was brought here by a company that won a contract to automate invoice processing and other financial processes at Petronas. So even though this 12, 13 years ago, automation means existed already, whether it was workflow-based, whether it was built-in features into some systems, but CFOs and finance teams and generally organizations were automating already. But this year, 2020, is pretty big, and Gartner has named hyper-automation concept one of the top 10 strategic technologies. So you see, like I told you, in the past, companies already automated. They had ways to automate a variety of things, but they realized that in order to automate complex processes, they need multiple different tools, multiple different vendors, and effort necessary to implement all these independent tools, effort necessary to integrate them and eventually build an automation that offered great ROI was very, very difficult. So with UiPath, we have taken this challenge very seriously, and we have built a platform that we refer to it as a hyper automation suite. If you take a look at this diagram, you'll notice that I have a big box that represents RPA. And it's true because RPA is a foundation for automation nowadays. Having only RPA robots, you can already start automating. You can start automating very powerful processes. You can achieve great ROIs, but you will notice that at some point of time, you will need more to automate more challenging processes. You will need machine learning. You will need a way to do some advanced analytics, process mining, and long-running workflows. So all of this is available as part of UiPath platform, and depends how complex process is that you want to automate, we can activate or deactivate certain components and simply help you to achieve the highest ROI possible. And when we're talking about platform itself, you see there is something what we call as RPA core. So we can build our robot, we can manage it efficiently in a centralized manner, and then eventually we can run it on attended way or unattended way. This is what's called RPA core, and this is where most of our customers starts. But you will notice if you go this path that at some point of time you will need help to discover all the possible automation opportunities around the organization. This is part of our discovery solution, which is component of our platform. You will notice that some processes, doesn't matter how hard you try, will still require people to be engaged in them, people to be involved in those processes. That's why UiPath engagement platform or engagement component is part of our platform, where a robot and people can work very efficiently together. And finally, if you realize the amount of data points that robots process on a daily basis, you will probably realize a huge potential of having these data points turned into dashboards, reports, or analytics. So that's why UiPath solution is it's complete and can help you to start very small, but at the same time, we're in for the long journey with you until we find all the best automation cases using our platform. And if we're talking about values behind automation, we do believe there are four most important ones. So first of all is to discover and manage every automation opportunity. You want to know what's happening in your company. You want to know what processes are executed on daily basis, and you want to be able to measure them and decide which one of them gets automated. The most important thing is you want to discover these processes and measure them very quickly. Another one is to enable automation enterprise-wide. We have solutions to automate those business critical processes across entire company, but at the same time, we want to enable your employees and let them automate the small tasks they do on a daily basis. So whether it's a big process, medium process, or small process, we want everyone to benefit from automation. And next thing is we want to automate more. We have done so much work in making sure that artificial intelligence and machine learning is easily embeddable in our processes. That's why we can deal with a pretty complex processes, even though you don't have to start with complex one, but at some point of time, if you choose to go into more complex ones to automate them, we'll be there to cover for you. And finally, we want to automate for results. We don't automate for the sake of automation. We want to automate processes that will demonstrate value and will offer a great ROI. So that's why important thing, analytics and ROI discovery tools can help us to automate for value. And finally, my last slide, before I hand it over to Muru, I want to highlight that UiPath is not only a piece of software, it's actually entire ecosystem and idea of democratizing RPA. You see, we have an academy. This is a set of online courses, totally free of charge for anyone. You can register, you can learn how to become an RPA developer. All these courses are pretty comprehensive and role-based. We offer a free software for personal and educational use. So as you learn, you can keep practicing. We have a very active forums with thousands of users who will help you if you get stuck at any point of time. We have a very comprehensive marketplace where you can download some automations and start, instead of starting from scratch, you can actually reuse the component and just modify it to your needs. Finally, we have a huge network of global partners like KGISL team that we're here with today. And we have signed up with a numbers of universities around the world as a part of our Academic Alliances program. And these universities, including universities in Malaysia, actually teach how to build UiPath robots. So students leaving those universities will enter a job market being able to tell their future employees, hey, I know how to do it faster with UiPath robot. Thank you very much for attention. I'll hand it over to Muru, who will show you how everything I said is actually applicable in reality. Muru, mic is yours.
Thank you, Thomas, for the nice narration. So, hello, everyone. So today I will continue to present some of the case studies and use cases in finance and all areas like where RPA can automate. So before I go in, I just wanted to talk about briefly about KGISL. We have 2 slides here to talk about KGISL. So KGISL is a 25-plus-year-old company, specifically focused in the APAC region. For software delivery and services. So we have over 2,000 plus employees and 200 plus Fortune 500 companies as customers. We operate in 7 plus countries at this point in time. So coming back to the IAG practice, we call Intelligent Automation Group, IAG as the practice. So we offer a variety of engagement models for our customers, starting with consulting in process discovery, process optimization, process analytics. Then we do RPA project implementations, proof of concepts, and we also do health check for processes. And we also do managed services. So being a diamond partner for UiPath, so we have a very strong delivery methodology for RPA implementations. We have seen very high success rates in over the years that we work with UiPath. So we are one of the earliest partner with UiPath working in the APAC region. So we work currently across 6 countries, and there are some stats which is specific to IAG practice alone. We are a 130 plus strong RPA team. So where many of our resources are certified RPA engineers. So we also are an official training partner with UiPath. So we provide a lot of corporate trainings for various organizations requesting for such trainings with RPA. So coming back to the case studies. So the University of Auckland is one of the biggest implementations of RPA in specifically in the higher education sector. So when the university started, they had a lot of business processes, and they had the opportunity to revisit and redesign and improve their existing processes to take advantage of the automation. So apart from improving their own processes and getting them documented, they also had the opportunity to launch their own RPA students course for the students that they can take. And then they are also created a center of excellence for RPA within the university. So the results, they have automated, because of the automation, they have saved around 23,000 hours of manual work annually, and there is a 99% success rate for the processes that they automated, right? So this is one of the biggest implementation. So there is a customer success story available on UiPath website that you can go through. So this is one another case study, which is fee payment reminders, which KJSL has implemented. So the challenge was these payments of the fees, the students need follow-up activities. So many of the times they fail to pay because they don't have timely reminders. So this was a highly intensive work where they don't have a proper mechanism to send reminders and then to follow up. So we implemented a UiPath robot that will generate a fee report from their fee management system, and then it will filter those transactions for pending fee payments, and then start sending emails and SMS reminders depending on the type of registrations that they have with the students. And also it updates the database to maintain when the reminders were lastly sent, and whether it has to send the second reminder or third reminder again in case if the student does not pay the fees on time again. So initially started as a general fee payment reminders, but later we converted the same solution as a very generic solution based on configurations. It can be used for sending any type of reminders, so that the university was able to follow up on book fees, late fee payments. So many other reminders were being sent using the same automation at a later point in time. So the benefits, we reduce 98% of human efforts, because it is practically impossible for a human to send reminders. So on-time reminders, definitely based on the schedules, 100% with 100% accuracy, and effective processing and reporting functionalities. Right. So this is one such automation case study wherein the organization benefited to a higher extent. So the next case study here I want to talk about is a library procurement process. So as you know, the supply chain is one of the biggest area for automation in RPA. So this particular higher education institute in Malaysia, there were 2 departments. So one, the finance and accounting team, where they are using GL system, and the purchase requisitions and purchase orders are being registered in this GL system. The second one is the library management software, where this procurement process is specifically for the libraries. So they have to also key in the acquisition of, based on the purchase orders, they have to do the acquisition entries in the library software. And these 2 departments applications are not integrated. So they choose RPA bots to as the automation tool here. and then we were able to automate the entire process effectively. We have also used OCR data extraction here. So the RPA bot starts like this. It starts downloading the purchase quotations from the vendors, various quotations from the vendors. So then it extracts the extracts the data from the quotations using OCR. Then we temporarily store it into an Excel file, which is an intermediate storage. And from the Excel, it creates the purchase requisitions entry on the GL system. So once the purchase requisitions is there, it also creates the acquisition entries in the library, right? There's library software, and then finally generates a control sheet for the transactions that it has created on that particular day. So this has reduced the lead time between the two departments. So basically, many of the times in manual process, they create the purchase requisition, but the entry does not reflect in the library software. So they take a lot of time, and then separately a different set of users enter it into the library software. So all those delays has been reduced to a greater extent. So seamless data integration was possible. 70% of the manual work has been reduced for these things, and there is a 800 plus hours of savings per month. So this is one good use case that we wanted to present in here. So apart from this, like I wanted to highlight some of the potential use cases, specifically in the higher education sector, where RPA can be leveraged. So attendance tracking is one such area where the organizations can use RPA effectively to track attendance. Right. So then right from starting from calculating the leave balances, sending notifications upon absence for the students, tracking the attendance of individuals, the in-out times, creating monthly timesheets, and also validating the adherence of attendance policies. That means like whether the student is adhering to the minimum attendance requirements. So that can be also validated, and it can send appropriate reminders to the students. So this is one potential use case where you can implement RPA with. The other areas like such as grading and assessment. So specifically creating mark sheets. So many universities still do manual data entry for mark sheets, right? So for generating the mark sheets, the staff has to enter the, after the scoring and assessment of the papers, that they have to put a manual effort to key in those data into the system. So now a bot can do the work for you. So keying in the data, creating the mark sheets with proper templates, the university templates, and then distributing the mark sheets via email will also save a lot of time in terms of manual work that you have. So there are some other potential use cases here which I have listed. So generally universities and higher education institutes can use these areas: application processing and student shortlisting. So RPA can help in terms of validating the eligibility criteria for the students who apply for different courses. And also it can help in terms of shortlisting candidates with proper business rules implemented in the process. Even alerts and timetable update. So it's a generic use case where in any area it can be used, and specifically it will be useful for colleges as well. University supply chain process, again, one example that we saw is the PO creation and purchase order requisition. So it can be used in different areas within the university to automate such processes. Service center, again, staff service center is one such area like where the staff service requests can be handled by a robot with proper, where like it can be routed to the correct people to handle the particular requests, where it takes time when human needs to attend to these kind of requests. So these are some of the potential use cases that any university can implement. So apart from the use cases that we discussed now, in general, the robotic process automation is being implemented in many areas. So I wanted to show you some heat maps. We will not go in deep in each of this slide. At a high level, I can show you some of the areas where we have already implemented and we have already have experience. We have experience in implementing things, right? So finance and accounting is one large area where RPA is being implemented in the industry, and the success rates are very higher. And specifically, if you see in setting up the customers in the system. So KYC process, setting up the customer, doing data entry, reading the application forms. So these kind of areas, like we have done a lot of automation in KGISL. The second area, where we have a lot of experience is like the invoicing, customer invoicing. So generating the invoices, managing the billings, doing ledger entries after we get the invoice, like posting it to the ledger, developing reports or creating reports for the management. So these are some of the areas like where we have already implemented use cases for many of our customers. And the success rates are higher when we do it for these areas. So here, like the color coding will give you like which are the areas which has high automation potential. The orange ones are medium, and then there are the gray areas where we still have to live with the manual process because we have limited automation potential. So when I say limited automation potential, the complexity in implementing automation in those areas are higher because we need machine learning algorithms and complex data processing techniques for implementing automation in those areas. So we have to always make a conscious call in terms of evaluating the benefits that we get from the automation towards like whatever investment that we are going to make, basically the return on investment. So another area in finance and accounting is the bank reconciliations, which is a very commonly used automation process, that is process for automation. So also like complete general accounting activities like posting general account ledgers based on the rules, like that can be also done. So coming back to HR processes, in HR, onboarding and recruitment is one area where every activity can be automated using a robot. So right from creating and posting job descriptions, JDs on your different websites, to sourcing your candidates, shortlisting candidates, will then like sending out interview letters, onboarding processes. All those processes can be automated using RPA. So we do have experience in implementing to some of our customers, and this processes like end to end. There are human also in the loop involved where we need some brain work. So it is not completely end to end automation I'm talking about, but the humans will be involved in between the processes, and certain steps like RPA can continue, and then the people will be available as part of the automation. So managing time and attendance is another area. Creating reports. These are all common processes that anyone can immediately start looking at. If you are starting with RPA implementation, the quick wins are those like whichever is highlighted here. So you can just go through this and see like these are some common use cases that every organization will have, right? So supply chain, again, it's a very vast area where we have opportunities to automate many of the areas listed here, including requisitions management, purchase order management, goods receipt monitoring. So all those areas, we have potential automation use cases available. So I am not going through in detail. Maybe like this, this can be an informative slide for you to later refer to, so that like you can choose or evaluate like your processes against whatever is listed here, right? So IT again, you have your laboratories. So IT test management. So UiPath is also coming up with a test suite where it can be used for testing your applications, IT applications, including performance testing, including functional testing. So you will be able to use UiPath for test management as well as application support. Specifically, these two areas are very common for us to implement in any organization. So finally, again, like coming back to IT, like we can use user administration, help desk services. So these are some common use cases where KGISL has implemented in many places, in many of our customers. Like we have implemented these use cases. So definitely, which will give you a strong return on investment. So these are some of the heat maps that we discussed now. So then let us move on to some of the slides about process discovery and selection. So being a finance and accounting leaders, so you can how you will have to select the processes based on what characteristics you have to select the processes is listed here. So these are the different process characteristics that usually we tell are more suitable for automation. So nowadays, with the advanced automation components and algorithms that we have, we can even try to automate complex processes than the basic rule-based processes. But still, like these are the characteristics that will be a quick win for you. So these are the 8 different characteristics. First thing is like it should be a rule-based process. If you can define the entire process with proper rules, it is easy for automation. It has to be highly manual and repetitive process. Okay, so there should be a low exception rate in the process. It should not be very dynamic that every time something is new and then there is an exception that's popping out. Then the systems that you choose for automation, it should be stable and mature with less system change. It should not be undergoing any change currently. High volume is always good because RPA can do high volume transactions, which is slow when done manually. The mature and stable process is another thing. Higher savings. So always you have to look for the return on investment. So there should be a cost benefit analysis that you have to perform on the process that you select. And standard readable electronic input is an advantage because the complexity of automating such input data is lesser. So when you choose a non-electronic input, say if you have scanned PDFs, you have to go with some additional components like OCR, where the implementation is more complex. It involves additional cost for the additional tools that you are going to use. So again, the return on investment is something like which you have to consider when you try to automate such complex use cases. So here I have this flow chart that explains how to go with evaluating all these process characteristics. The boxes in the blue, like it gives you a high level idea about that it is not necessarily any process like whatever you're doing currently manually has to has to as such be adapted for automation. There can be situations where you might also look for process reengineering or for process improvements initiative, because like you may not have standardized the process when you have it in the manual as a manual process. So when you try to automate, you might have to standardize certain things and look for opportunities to improve. That's how RP also help to improve your existing business processes. Apart from that, like on the bottom, you can see that there are 3 processes which is given a score against the various process characteristics. And out of this, you can see process A is more suitable for automation, whereas process C, because of the characteristics, it does not meet the characteristics. It is not suitable, or it is less suitable for automation than process A when compared to process A. So it is always like a balance that you have to strike between what has to be automated and what has to be still kept manual. Maybe there can be situations where you don't need to do end-to-end automation. Instead, you keep certain steps manual, but the other areas you can automate. So that depends on your organizational assessment that you perform. So normally we create a process backlog, which will include all your processes, and then we do a prioritization based on the assessments, like based on the return on investment, based on the benefits it's going to offer. If you take the benefits on x-axis and the complexity on y-axis, we can group the processes into 4 different buckets. So those processes with higher benefits and higher lower complexity will go into the quick wins, whereas like if the benefits are low but the complexity of automation is also low, we name it as low hanging fruits. The benefits are high and the complexity is also high, then we put it in the bucket of must do improvements. If the benefits are low and if the complexity is high, we could keep it in the long-term improvements bucket. So these are the 4 quadrants, and from this, like, you can start prioritizing and taking it into sprints, and then start the RPA implementation. So usually we start with quick wins, then we move on to long-hanging fruits and must-do improvements. That's the order that we start automating. But there can be certain processes where the business priority is higher, which is more critical for the business. So we can always look at those processes and then prioritize, even if it is complex to automate. So finally, before I wrap up, I wanted to show this slide, which talks about the automation first mindset. So any organization that has an automation first mindset can realize substantial performance gains and take the lead in their industries. This is from McKinsey. So the automation first maturity model starts like anywhere in different you can be at any of these 4 stages or 4 levels of maturity. So if you are in a starting stage, maybe like less than 10 bots, right? And you are just implementing robots in different departments or functions. Then you go into the scaling level of maturity where you implement RPA in across departments in the entire organization. Then you move into the transforming level where there can be a bot for every person in the organization. Everyone in the organization are familiar with bots, using the bots, and they are familiar with the processes. Any process that comes in newly, so they will think like what can be automated and what cannot be, what should be kept as manual. And finally, the last level is the extending level, where we call it as a gigabot economy, wherein like we have thousands of bots and people start using thousands of automations, so across the organization, and they keep scaling, right? So this is something like which is the maturity model for automation first maturity model. So with that, I finally wrap up this particular session, and we have some time for Q&A, the last 10 minutes. So anybody like can post your Q&A on the window, and we can take the questions.
Hi, Muru. Thank you so much for that. Muru, Thomas, both of you. I think it was a very good understanding and the explanation. So we have a few queries that have come in. Maybe, I'll just go through each one of them, and either one of you can help me answer these. Right? Maybe, the first one, Thomas, you can take. Can the RPA solution be implemented over a cloud?
So at this moment, we offer part of our UiPath platform as a service on the cloud, but most of our customers still prefer to have robots operating on premise, especially when it comes to sensitive information, and especially when it comes to personal information. We see our customers to prefer run robots within their premises. But like I said, the management component we call Orchestrator is available as a service on the cloud, and it can be deployed literally within a number of hours and made it ready for an organization.
Okay, fantastic. Next one, either one of you can take it up. How should the organizations start with RPA within their universities? So what should be their first step? I think that is where they're wanting to understand.
I think, Muru, you can take it, right?
Yeah. So am I audible?
Yeah. Go ahead, Murkesh.
Yeah. So any university, even if they wanted to start with the automation, specifically we start with the process discovery phase. It can be 2 ways. We can ask the departments or the process owners to come up with their own nominations for the various processes to be automated. We can now UiPath has also launched Automation Hub as one of the lifecycle management tool for RPA, which helps in creating the process backlog. Assessment of all those processes can be done on the Automation Hub tool itself. And so once we collect all the process nominations, like then we can do the assessments and then select one of the processes as a pilot if the university requires a pilot to be done, and an implementation partner can implement the pilot project for them, and then like they can realize the return on investments on the pilot project, and then continue to scale based on the priorities that we listed in the assessment as a result of the assessment. So then we scale through sprints. So that is how we start with the implementation for any organization.
Perfect, Murugesh. I think what you're mentioning is identify the processes, conduct a small pilot, and then check the ROI, and then they can move ahead from there.
Yes.
Perfect. Thomas, next one for you. What is the computer language used to build the RPA Studio robots?
That's a good question. And actually, the answer to it may be a little bit surprising. You don't need to know any programming language at all to build robots. I strongly recommend you take a look at our UiPath Academy courses, and you will see we have two versions of Studio. So Studio, there is the Studio X, which is designed for business users, those totally non-technical business users who want to automate their daily tasks. And this one requires no knowledge of programming at all. The other product we have is called Studio. This one is for developers who's completed our academy. And even though you still don't need to know a programming language to build robots, if you do know, you can achieve some faster results, especially if you are familiar with Visual Basic .NET or C#. But like I said, I will emphasize this once again, you don't need any programming language skills to start working and start building robots.
Perfect. So Thomas, I think you've answered a couple of questions there, which I had. One was, do you need IT team to pick up this RPA, or the users can do it themselves?
We strongly recommend our customers to empower them employees. And like I said, because we don't need those employees to be familiar with programming languages, everyone can start, sign up for Academy, take a look at this. And, some people will actually come back to you and say, hey, I believe I see a potential in this, and maybe you can get me the software so I can build a robot myself. So it's always good to have IT team on board, to be aware of what's going on, but their involvement can be next to nothing for some smaller scale automation.
Perfect. Murugesh, I think you can help us with this. The quick question is, how much time does it generally take for implementation of one process? Like the example that you were giving earlier for the library procurement process.
Okay, so any process, like we categorize into 3 different categories depending on the complexity. So when it is a low complex process, we can implement anywhere between 15 to 20 days. This includes the UAT as well as the requirement study, everything put together. If you consider only the development time, like it is lesser than that, but usually we also combine it with the other factors until go live, right? So for typically for a medium process, like it might go up to 25, somewhere it can range from 25 days to 35 days. And for a complex process, it can go up to 50 days, And it also depends on the input data, whether we are handling some unstructured data or other third-party tools like OCR tools. There are many factors to be taken into account.
All right. Next one, is there any requirement to be able to pick up the bot building knowledge and skills? So is there any technical understanding that they need to have, or any kind of domain knowledge that they need to have for picking up the bot building skills?
Let me answer this question. So you see, it really depends on the process itself. We're talking about automating some simple daily tasks employees or business users execute on every day. There is no need for any technical knowledge. Like I said, just sign up to UiPath Academy, complete our course on Studio X, and you're ready to start building some robots. Of course, if we're talking about more complex process, like a very sensitive and business critical processes, this is where we want people who are a little bit more familiar with robot building, and they have more experience with things such as dealing with exceptions, making sure that the performance is right, and on and on. So generally people who know best practices in RPA. So in short, simple, easy, daily task, anyone can automate without technical skill. More complex ones, you want to have the right people to do it. And this is where KGISEL team steps in and can help.
Perfect. We have one more. So it says that we had mentioned earlier that we were talking about recruit and onboarding of employees that can as a process which can be automated. How does RPA ensure data confidentiality in the areas of job offer, especially there are, say, salary or personal information involved?
Maybe I'm going to let me take this one as well. So sure. When it comes to robots, usually robots actually make people responsible for compliance happy. Because you see, robots have no agendas. If you design a robot to process the data in specific way, this robot will always do it. It will not deviate from design path. It will not steal the data. It will not, accidentally send it to the right place, to the wrong place, and on and on. So robots can work with sensitive data. We have a lot of companies who have implemented robots in Europe, especially, and they were, of course, considered with the sensitive information because there is the Sensitive Information Act available over there. So robots can actually help you in a few ways. First of all, like I said, they have no agenda. Second of all, everything that robot does is traceable. Third, robots can actually mask data that should not be visible to the operator. So you can imagine that you have a form, and this form contains information about employee address, and also the same form contains information about employee salary. If you have an operator, business user, who's expected to update the address, but he's not supposed to see the salary information, actually robot can fetch the address data from the system. User will have no access to the system, or at least no access to the specific space or area of the system. Robot will just fetch the data that user is allowed to see, will display a form that business user will interact with in order to update the address, and then robot will write this information back to the system. So you see, at this stage, business user will never have any access to sensitive information, will only work with the minimum set of data he needs.
I think there's one more, Thomas, which I think you could help us. The question is, and it says, just out of curiosity, on what language is the UiPath robots built?
I think this question was, okay, what is the computer language used to build the RPA Studio robots? I think I've answered this question already, but let me very briefly re-emphasize it. You don't need any programming language to build robots. But if you choose, we still make it possible to write more complex part of the logic using either VB.NET or Python. It's possible, and new release will add C# support. But like I said, please really consider what I'm saying. In order to start and even to build a pretty complex robot, you don't need any programming language.
All right, thank you so much, Thomas. I think we're done with the time as well. It's almost it's past 12. I really want to thank both of our speakers and presenters today, Murukesh and Thomas. I'm sure it was an incredible session for the audience. Right, terrific examples, terrific explanation. Thank you so much for joining in.
And I think the final statement here is that, of course, if you have any further questions, please feel free to drop us an email, and we'll be happy to share the knowledge. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, team. Thank you so much,
yeah.
all of you, for joining in. Bye.